Manuel Sanders.
Hey, this is Pat Ricard, aka Project Pat, and you're listening to the Baltimore Beatdown Podcast, the best Ravens podcast on the planet.
It's pretty incredible. In fact, it's la-marvelous.
Thank you, guys.
All right, welcome on back to another edition of the Baltimore Beatdown Podcast. It is Tuesday/Wednesday, releasing this to the RSS feeds. My name is Jake Luke. I'm joined by Spencer Schultz and Vasilis Lurikos. We wanted to hop into the studio here to do a quick little roundtable discussion on the first 2 days of Baltimore Ravens free agency, which has been, I think, interesting is probably a good word. I don't think everyone on Ravens Twitter is super satisfied. I think, we all three have our misgivings about what has gone down, but we also are pretty happy about what has gone down as well in a lot of different ways. So, how you guys doing? First off,
How you doing, Vaz?
I'm doing great. It's been fun. We're mixing it up with the comms with on the social media. It's been a rollicking start.
It's been a lot of fun. The Ravens are playing it close to the vest. Nothing splashy yet, but if they don't make any moves, if there's not like a Melvin Ingram, if there's not a Curtis Samuel, or if there's not at least one more notable kind of impact addition, then I think they're falling a little bit short. And in the wide receiver front, we'll just get right into it. The wide receiver front, it feels like Corey Davis. The Ravens have at this point signed Kevin Zeitler and then brought back Wolfe and Bowser. And you're getting 3 starters there. In terms of a guy like Corey Davis, it feels like you could either have Corey Davis or those 3 guys. I personally am going to take those 3 guys, but it's just this weird – I don't know. It's tough. The cap is so deep and dark, and the ways that teams maneuver around it and choose to or choose not to are things that we just don't know fully, and what the options are. How deep can the Ravens go? Can they make all these restructures happen? Can they restructure Stanley and Humphrey and Tucker and whoever else, get another $10 million and go find 2-3 more starters? Do they not want to do that? Why do they not want to do that? And it's just tough to go that dark into. But in terms of the signings they've already had, it was value, and value. So you can't be mad at those. But if you're not walking out of the end of this free agency for me with another impact starter, of course we want a receiver, of course we would like a Rodney Hudson or Melvin Ingram or something like that, it feels like a disservice if you're not going to get another value signing at least. Like, it felt like you didn't get a high impact player so that you could get 3-4 value signings. So need something else to put on the board here to feel good.
It's an interesting split dynamic, I think, where they've basically done the classic Ravens moves, right? You're seeing all the people on Twitter like, oh, trust in Ozzy, or DeCosta, in DeCosta we trust. He has a plan, like all that kind of stuff. And like all that stuff is great. And I totally agree. And that's what those type of moves are. And they are good moves, in fact. But you're at sort of a weird kind of juncture, kind of a weird fulcrum point right now with the franchise, where it feels like you kind of want to take another step, right? And to do that, it kind of feels like you might need some more significant moves to be made. And there are some people climbing up onto the ledge because they miss out on Corey Davis and Marvin Jones. And I had to, a little bit of a tweet that may have sounded like I was doing that when Jones got signed. That was more just to do with the money and the fact that I'm maybe getting a little frustrated that there haven't even been any whiffs of like them getting in on one of these pass catchers, which is really what I would like to see them do. I think I've made that pretty clear, and I've, kind of had to defend DeCosta and defend the organization a little bit the last couple of months, thinking that, they understand that this is a need, and I think they still do, but so far yet we haven't really seen the moves. And I think we will eventually at some point, but right now we're just kind of drifting. Still a lot of names out there, sneaky though, which is kind of interesting to see as well. We'll certainly see what they do. Voss, what was your reaction to first Zeitler kind of coming the morning before free agency actually even opened, and then Bowser coming back, and then Derek Wolfe coming back as well?
Great moves all around. Zeitler was an A-plus signing in my mind, really solidifies the line. I think the Ravens confidently field a top 5 offensive line right now. Can you add more to that? I guess, but if you're adding more to that, you're taking away from somewhere else. Bowser was another great one. You had to keep one. He's the Sam. He has that coverage ability to unlock wing scheme. Great price too, $5.5 million a year. That's a steal. And Wolfe makes perfect sense. Played a ton of snaps. $4 million a year. $3 million a year. Great signing all around. To me, it's about balance, and the Ravens don't have to jump into the deep end on the big number one. I've said that all along, but I think, as Spencer said many times, you want to go into the draft able to draft with both hands. You don't want to have a glaring need. I think they do have a glaring need at wide receiver right now. I am not confident that Miles Boykin and James Prochet and Devin Duvernay can fill 2 starting spots. I think you need to grab a receiver, and preferably it'd be somebody that's on the younger side, not 33, 34 years old, not injury prone, and could be a little bit more than a stopgap. There are some names, and hopefully they can free up, 5.2 from Stanley, 1.8 from Humphrey, 1.6 from Tucker, another $1 million from Clark, according to Brian McFarland, the cap guru. That's enough money to sign a wide receiver, and then you really do have that balanced team. Let's not forget they lost Judon Ngakoue, Jihad Ward, so we don't want to be less talented than we were last year. I don't think that's going to be the way to go further in the playoffs.
And adding on to your point, Vaz, it feels like you mentioned Prochet, Duvernay, and Boykin, but not just that. The thing for me is always kind of being a little bit injury-proof in important areas.
Absolutely.
And then even if one of those guys goes down, God forbid Hollywood misses 6 games or misses an entire season, then where are you left? So I think to go into next season without adding another confident, bona fide pass catcher is negligent in terms of depth, especially. And just because of the fact that you needed a little more juice, you needed a little bit better of an offensive line. You're kind of treading water defensively right now. The Ravens are negative defensively right now. They brought back Wolfe and they brought back Bowser, but they haven't improved their defense from last year. They lost Judon. They lost Ngakoue. They already had Bowser. They already had Wolfe. So as of right now, you've improved your offensive line, and then you're just treading water. So there's other teams making moves. The Bills just signed Emmanuel Sanders. We'll see the terms of that deal, but having more depth offensively and more confidence and the ability to overcome injuries is imperative. And this is a really heavy wide receiver draft class. Again, there are several options that should be there at 27. I don't think you're going to see both Rashad Bateman and Terrace Marshall. 2 big, tall, fast, explosive, run after the catch, tough over the middle, all the things you want. One of them has to be there. You're not going to see Devontae Smith and Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle and Kyle Pitts and Rashad Bateman and Terrace Marshall all gone. So on that front, I'm okay. But then the question becomes, all right, but are they going to take a wide receiver then? And then is it going to end up being someone like a Marquez Stevenson, someone who's really fast and plays on the boundary or something like that? And at a certain point, you do need to try and capitalize. Lamar Jackson, while the cap is down, imagine if Lamar Jackson had a $25 million cap hit right now. Where would they be? They'd be in the freaking gutter, depth-wise, talent-wise. They'd have Stanley, they'd have Humphrey, they'd have Lamar Jackson, and they wouldn't have shit else.
And you talk about, sorry to cut you off, but you talk about balance. Like, you got to have balance at a position that often has 3 players on the field at the same time. Like, you have
the most likely formation was 11. Even though they ran more than any other team, they still ran more 11 than anything else.
Right, they did.
Right.
And you have to be able to, have, a diversified portfolio there age-wise, I think. And I don't like you mentioned, I don't want the old AJ Green type or Emmanuel Sanders I would have been fine with, but he's gone now. And there are plenty of guys out there, man. Like, there's Curtis Samuels, there's Juju's, which, listen, I've had my fun talking about how I don't want him to come here. That was more just like the TikTok thing. Like, I think I can probably get past it because, like, the way things are going right now, I think he would probably actually be one of the more optimal options for them. And maybe
the more we've talked about Juju offline, the more we like Juju.
Yeah. And maybe that's just us spin zoning the fact that, like, he's looking to be one of the better options left for them. But I do think his market might be a little bit depressed right now, just like these other guys were. We expected Marvin Jones to go for more. We expected a lot of these other guys to go for more. Corey Davis. So maybe you can get him within that $12 million type range that you're talking about with Corey Davis. I'd be fine for that. They probably have the money to do that right now, even without all those restructures, which if they do that and they restructure, do some other moves. And the thing is, you talk about balance as well. Another thing is, like, I've often maintained that, like, you can't be great at every single position. And, like, if they have to take a hit at, like, edge this year a little bit, I think I'm fine with that. Like, you got to figure it out somewhere. Like, you have to figure it out at these positions where you allegedly, and I do like Wink a lot, but you have this superstar coordinator. There's all this talk about manufacturing pass rush. Well, why don't you just give that a shot and, like, maybe invest a little bit in the position that you haven't been able to manufacture production from for 25 years.
So as far as the restructures, these are all players that are going to be with the team long term. They are young players. They're not injury prone. We're not talking about let's add 3 void years onto Brandon Williams and Calais Campbell until they're 40 years old. These are reasonable moves to make. A lot of the other teams in the NFL, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, for example, the 2 Super Bowl teams, are backloading everything like crazy and borrowing money. The Ravens do need to be prudent. We don't want to go crazy overboard where they're going to have this massive rebuild in 2 years.
They also haven't had the success to that level where they feel confident in doing that. Maybe they don't have the band to keep together necessarily.
And you don't want to be the Saints either, because that's just like a tough scene.
Right, but you also don't want to always have a B level team or a B plus level team. For all we know, these teams go all in, and then in a couple years, Buffalo and Cleveland and Indy go all in, and then you're just always falling.
For all we know, it could be the Jets in 3 years going all in, adding void years, pulling out all the stops. I mean, Belichick.
If Justin Fields is like a Pro Bowler for the Jets in a couple of years, it probably will be them, honestly.
It needs to be balanced, and if you're ever going to borrow from future years, this is the year to do it. The cap went down. The Ravens are still very, very well positioned against.
And is about to shoot up.
Yeah, it's going to go up with the TV deals, and they have, I think, the 9th most in the league next year. And you can pay Lamar Jackson $40 million, and you still have space next year. So I think they should be a little bit more aggressive. Circling back to Spencer's point about the draft, I do think one of those receivers will probably be there, although sometimes receivers do go a little bit earlier than they're projected. We saw that a lot last year. I'm just not confident that they're going to say, okay, Terrace Marshall's on the board, but Kwity Paye is also on the board, and Tevin Jenkins, and we're going to go with Marshall, for instance. I think you want to be able to say, well, if there's a great right tackle, we
know that they value what they've said. The things that they have given us, and they are honest with, is that they value receiver less. They value offensive line very much so, and they value those edge defenders very much so as well. And we also know that when things are equal, it goes to the positional need. They do BPA. But when BPA is 3 guys, then it goes to the tiebreaker's positional need, and it will be Jenkins or Paye if they are all even over a Terrace Marshall.
I don't think that's necessarily the best strategy. I know the Ravens run the ball more than any other team, but I think there's a trickle-down effect from having better weapons on the outside, being able to stretch the field horizontally and getting that extra safety out of the box. You can have the best offensive line in the league, and they're pretty close to having that, and they might even add the center, Hudson, and that's a possibility, but you cannot keep having stack boxes. It's not going to work.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think you guys make a lot of great points. Voss, you did touch on that they did have some interesting losses. I was interested to see Max Judon wind up with the Patriots, who are just signing everyone, apparently. Unique Ngakoue goes to the Raiders for a 2-year deal. I think he got pretty much the exact same deal as Nelson Aguilar, which was funny to see. But those 2 guys are going to be out of the mix now, and then other guys are entering the mix as players are getting cut. Feels like the Raiders are probably going to be making a move for a quarterback here because they got rid of a lot of guys, including Rodney Hudson, who some people appear to be interested in for the Ravens.
I'm definitely very interested in Rodney Hudson, but going back to Vaz's point is that you've got these stacked boxes, but that's why the Boykin situation is so perplexing overall. And the Boykin situation is essentially he's on the field a lot, he runs a lot of routes, and he doesn't get targeted much. And he was lined up in ISO, if I recall correctly. The numbers are going to be slightly off, but I believe it was about 81 times he was lined up on an island, ISO, with 1 cornerback. And I think he got 4 targets on 81 pass plays, him ISO, 4 targets, one-on-one coverage. Again, if you watch Des Bryant's workout highlights from practice or the Senior Bowl or all these different things, when you've got a guy truly one-on-one and there is no help for quite some distance, you have to be able to win there. And having Boykin on the field, if he's not going to be that trusted guy, that's the mistake. And you can't keep throwing Boykin out there and not giving him the football. And whether he's going to fuck up or not, whether he's going to make mistakes or not, he has to get thrown the ball there. That is part of backing the defense back up. And if he can't take advantage of those opportunities, and that's who you're trusting, then again, it's just a mistake overall. But adding Rodney Hudson would be absolutely great. There's guys that can separate in this draft, but it's just eventually something has to happen. And I feel very strongly something will happen before the regular season. There will be a one-on-one playmaker added as well.
That's as spot as the X. I think Duvernay, I'm comfortable with him in the slot. Just need an X. To bring in an X doesn't have to be the Sammy Watkins, and hopefully he stays healthy even. Somebody, though. I think
you don't even need him on the field that much.
Yeah.
You don't need Watkins on the field.
No, you're fine. I think you guys are making some really good points. I think Sammy Watkins is a guy that I've actually been pretty interested in going back a couple of months. I think he would be an interesting addition because, I feel like the discussion on the wide receiver conversation is, I don't want to accuse people of being intellectually dishonest, but maybe it's just kind of forgetting about the fact that you have Mark Andrews in the mix, and also Nick Boyle is going to be coming back. And those guys are both, Andrews is, I think, a pretty great receiver in his own right. Boyle's pretty good. Obviously he's coming off the injury, so there's concerns there. But those two guys, I think, help out a little bit more than some are willing to admit. So maybe a Watkins would do, a little bit more than people are kind of thinking, or even a Keelan Cole or a Curtis Samuel or whoever it might be. But yeah, you have to do something. You have to do something at receiver. And I saw Banks, who is plugged into the building, say that they don't prioritize it. And you've been saying that, Voss, as well. And I've been, kind of hedging a little bit, saying maybe not as much as other teams, but I think they're going to figure it out this offseason. It's time. Figure it out. I'm tired of talking about it. I'm tired of it.
It is exhausting. It's exhausting. This is the 50th conversation we've had about it. And at this point, we just want to end it, to test it against the method and whatever. And this formula they've had, Lamar won an MVP without it, but then the offensive line couldn't get it done, have gotten their shit pushed in a couple times in the playoffs. But it's been so long. It is such a tired conversation that we've been waiting on in Baltimore for the receiver. And Hollywood Brown, I think, has turned out really well. I think has been a good pick, not a great pick, but a good pick. He is a good receiver, maybe not a great receiver, but
he's a good end of the first round receiver.
What was it? What was he picked? 22?
25?
Higher than that, yeah.
24?
Something like that. In the 20s, yeah.
Yeah, 25.
But at this point, he's not the middle of the field, big body guy, and that's why I think Juju makes sense. I think Juju can go run a fucking slant in one-on-one coverage and go get you 13 yards and break the occasional tackle and be tough in the red zone. And, I'm looking at his stupid basic numbers and watching some stupid highlight tapes of him and stuff, and he breaks a lot of tackles. He gets a lot of yak. He's not a burner, but he stiff-armed the crap out of Tramon Williams. He's a big physical bowling of a presence, and that's what they're missing. That's what they're missing, that physicality over the middle of the field, and I think he can give it to you.
I'm comfortable with Hollywood as being a quasi number one in this offense. Doesn't have to be, you don't need a prototype number one, but I think every passing offense needs three respected weapons to spread the defense out, and right now they have two. But I don't want to go down too negative. We talked about receivers. I think DeCosta's done a nice job, really nice job. Short up the offensive line.
They haven't made any mistakes with guys they've brought back.
Zeitler's been great. And if they kick Bozeman over to center, then you have four, competent guys, promising guys to fight over one spot. You feel pretty good there. Bring in Wolfe back now, and then you have Matabike in a rotational role. So the defensive line's looking good. We know inside linebacker stacked, running back stacked, tight end's pretty good. Cornerback is amazing. So maybe
safety, you're confident but looking to add.
Yeah, you maybe add a safety if there's a cheap guy down the road, or you look to the draft. Tight end, the same thing. They're in pretty good position. It's just that one spot I think still needs to be addressed. That's all. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, and I think it has potential to be. I think the elephant in the room, or maybe not even that, because it feels like it's not even being discussed a ton right now, is the Orlando Brown situation. I mean, the guy's just kind of hanging out there, and there have been
coming back.
Yeah, there have been updates that have kind of trickled out.
He can't hold out.
Teams have started to call. I don't know. He might come back, man. But at the same time, if he doesn't, then he could maybe fetch some receiver, some young guy, like a DJ Shark, for example, who, the extremely well-sourced CJ Golson was throwing it out there on Twitter. Orlando Brown was going to be fetching DJ Shark from the Jaguars, and then Jaguars owner, everyone's favorite thirst bucket, Tony Khan, jumped into the mix and replied to us on Twitter.
Right.
That was a load of crap or something like that, which was sick.
So sick. That was amazing.
Yeah, so I don't know. He could be a chip to go get a guy, and there are probably plenty of guys that are on their first contract or maybe cheap that could net them a good option as well. And
Gallup.
Yeah, Gallup. And like if that happens, like I'm totally fine with that too, because like tackle is another spot. This is an organization that has figured it out at tackle at times. Not as much last year, but in the past they've shown an ability to do so. So I'd be confident in their ability to do that. And if that could get a Michael Gallup, sign me the fuck up, you know?
What is the worst case right now of how the next like 3 days go? What is the worst case?
I think the worst case is they kind of strike out at receiver, and
I just don't want to hear. I don't want to hear how close they were. That's gonna piss me off.
It's happened with
want to hear that again.
It happened with Hopkins. It happened with Thielen. At a certain point, like close isn't enough anymore.
We're not even looking for Hopkins, Thielen level people. We got over that dream a long time ago.
They're never going to pay someone $15+ million a year. That's never going to.
And that's fine. And that's fine. Yeah. But I think that's probably the worst case. Or I think trading Brown could be potentially a worst case depending on what you get back. The way I like to look at it is if they're trading Brown, they're getting a first-round pick and they're taking a right tackle with that pick. And that way you can kind of fill the board in and fill the needs in that way. But that's not guaranteed, and it'd be a shame if you trade Brown and you don't end up filling that spot adequately, and then the upgrade you made with Zeitler is negated, and then where are you? I don't like being in limbo. I hate being in limbo. I would almost – the Ravens way is great. I'll probably get crucified for this. They've only won two playoff games in 8 years, and I don't think sustainability contend every year is the best way. Sometimes it's better to take
Packers are in a better place than the Ravens are.
Sometimes it's better to take a retool year. Sometimes it's better to take a cap reset year and say we're gonna do okay, but we're not gonna spend. And then we have more money to spend in 2 years, and we're gonna win the Super Bowl that year.
I don't think that you should get crucified for saying that, because like their last Super Bowl that they won pretty much exactly syncs up with when the CBA changed and the whole rookie contracts thing completely changed the way the NFL is structured. So I don't think you should be crucified for thinking that way.
And I feel like a lot of that has to do with Harbaugh. I feel like a lot of that has to do with Harbaugh not wanting to allow the opportunity for his job to come into question. And so he's going to be making big pushes every single year to ensure that they don't have that blemish on his record. The only blemish he has really is a Joe Flacco ACL year and a couple of
it was deeper than that though that year. They should have rebuilt after that year. I'll stand by that forever. I said that at the time, and I'll stand by that. They should have cut Doomerville. They should have reset. They only won 5 games.
Let Brandon Williams go.
I mean, there was a couple of things. You can't change the past, but you can. I think they need to evolve a little bit, their organizational philosophy, and I think it starts with Bisciotti and trickles down from there.
We also have David
it's only
Culley,
getting more competitive.
Apparently, we have David Culley right now coming out and saying that that the Ravens passing offense, I'm trying to find it word for word, but essentially is limiting Lamar Jackson, and he's capable of as much as you want to ask of him. So that has to be a direct indictment of Greg Roman from the horse's mouth of David Culley. We've talked about the passing scheme ad nauseum. They don't have a ton of guys they're super confident in to run a bunch of different route concepts, whatever. At the same time, blame goes to David Culley, blame goes to Greg Roman. And what do you think? David Culley's gonna be like, yeah, it was all my fault. I don't know.
Blame goes to Lamar Jackson too, you know.
So it feels like what's happening is kind of starting to value Greg Roman above maybe Lamar Jackson and above everything else. If they don't do anything, if they don't acquire a pass catcher, if they don't even acquire a Jared Cook, let's say, throughout this period, and everything is back in again, they go draft another corner, they go draft another free safety, edge player, all these different things, whatever. They don't lean into the passing game at all, and they fall short yet again. It feels like you bought into Greg Roman above Lamar Jackson, and I think that is the wrong way to go.
I think it's hardball. I mean, just reading between the lines, he wants to do things his way, and I understand that, but the rest of the league isn't doing that, and sometimes you can only zigzag so far, and when it doesn't, you need to evolve and modify. I don't think they should be the 32nd most passing attempts next year. I think maybe it should be the 28th most passing attempts. That will only.
And the difference between 28 and 32 is probably the difference between 27 and 19.
Yeah, well, they threw the ball 100 times less than everybody else, 150 times less.
Right.
I mean, that only prepare them better for the playoffs. You can still do it, just not so.
They haven't been balanced enough to do what they want offensively. They haven't been able to take the pressure off of their running offense with their passing offense. You're not giving the harmony for your rushing offense.
I do think the zag when everyone else zig thing worked when they were rebuilding and when they were kind of bringing Lamar in and kind of hedging against like this team was built for Flacco, but now we have Lamar and like
it made a good transition.
It made it, it was a good transitory sort of strategy, but I think it's time to ramp things up a little bit.
Now, on the bright side, Zeitler is an encouraging sign that he's maybe a little bit better in pass pro than a run blocker. So that's a change there. So maybe they are leaning a little bit more in that direction than we're giving them credit for.
Yeah, you got that. You got Bozeman kicking into center. I'm confident this offensive line is going to be pretty damn good next season. So,
and there's like random people. I can't remember if it was like Bill Barnwell or someone of the sort, but it was like a big national guy randomly was like, "Oh, this makes sense with them kicking Bozeman inside too." And it was someone so random, and I was like, "All right, well." And JLC has been adamant that is the plan.
That's
and when he kind of sticks to something for a while, it feels like it's right.
He's been right a lot lately. Like we get on him a lot, but like he's been right. He's been pretty on the money recently.
He'll still throw out like a one-time take that's a little crazy, like one day, but I'll never talk about it again.
I truly think he believes everything that he says. He might not always be right, but I think he
might get rumors that might not end up happening. That happens.
Right. Yeah, it does happen.
But if that's what's going on, and it's Bozeman there, and there are 4 guys competing at left guard, that's fine. But
nobody has 5 studs. I mean, nobody has 5 studs across
the Browns and the Bucks
and the Bucks and Dallas if they're healthy, maybe. But
Dallas, I think their time has expired.
The Bucks also have 5 receivers. I mean, the Bucks are just loaded to the gills at every position. You know, they brought everybody back. I can't believe that. It blows my mind that they were able to do that with the cap.
And it feels like that is fully within Eric DeCosta's capability. It's within the Ravens' capability, but they have no desire to do so. The Bucks are going to go all in for their Tom Brady window, and that's maybe 2 more years at the most. And the question for me is, how damning is it to do half of what the Bucks do in terms of a 5-year plan? When you're comparing, we're not seeing any of that happening in Baltimore right now at all. There's none of it. And free agency is not over. There's still tons of guys. Who knows? Maybe the Ravens shock the world and grab one of these big name receivers, whatever. But there's just no possible moves that are mortgaging the future in any way. Not even taking out a credit card. They're not even opening a line of credit, is what I'm trying to say. And it feels like there's more that can be done. And considering this is the last year of Lamar Jackson being truly cheap, I mean, what is he, the 33rd most expensive quarterback? He's getting $1 million this year. And of course the cap sucks, but you know what? Earl Thomas costs you $10 million and that's it. That's all you can do. Like you're so incredibly backed into a corner. I just don't fully understand how other teams are operating in the same cap without rollover money and maybe mortgaging the future. Absolutely. But the Ravens aren't opening a $500 line of credit on a MasterCard at all. And it feels like something has to be coming in the next day down this pipeline.
I think it is. I truly think something is coming. Like, I don't think that they're, like I've said, I think Eric DeCosta is smart. If he doesn't do anything, I will still think that, but disagree with him. But I do think something is coming. I think something is going to happen.
Whether it's a Fuller or a Curtis Samuel, I would love to see it. And I think there might be opportunity to grab a couple second wave, third wave, like $1 million a year veteran contracts guys. And if they want to save some of this restructurability for that, it makes sense too. And then they can really, because the AFC is going to be tough next year. You know, they're going to need depth. They're going to need stars and depth, I think, to really. Cleveland looking pretty good. They making some good moves, and so we'll see how it goes. Out. Yeah.
Johnson, they get Odell back, and I feel like Odell notices, you know, what went on there and where he needs to fit.
What's going on with him?
I think he's just beat up from tearing your ACL. You know, tearing your ACL sucks. He's a high-level athlete trying to get back after it, and I think he's probably picked up on the vibes of what he needs to do in Cleveland to make that team a winner and go be a real superstar. And real superstars win, and he hasn't done that yet. Yeah,
I mean, he had one winning season in New York, and then he was on their team last year, but he wasn't a huge contributor when they finally did get over that playoff hump. So that does it's a tough scene for Odell there. Hopefully for his sake, he can bounce.
I was having dreams that I was falling asleep last night, and I remember reading something kind of late about Von Miller, and I just started imagining Von Miller as a Raven. And then I think the Broncos decided to bring him back.
What do you guys think of edge rushers? Are you shopping around for an Ingram at this point, or you want to fill a couple other needs first?
One of Kerrigan, Houston, Ingram has to be willing to play cheap and want to win.
And you can probably get them after signing a pass catcher.
And I think you can wait a while. I think why does Justin Houston need to sign a contract right now? He doesn't give a crap. He's been a free agent 16 times. He's already gotten big paydays. He's played on 3 teams?
Yeah.
Or just 2? Who do you play for?
KC, Indy.
Is there a third?
No,
or is it
2? This is he was in KC for a long time.
Yeah, it was
right.
2.
Okay. Well, he's been a free agent before. He went to, Indy. Ravens, I wanted him previously when he ended up signing with Indy. And I don't think he needs a sign right now. Ryan Anderson, a sneaky, professional that I think could come in, play in a heavy rotational role at the least, and give you some solid professional depth there at the least.
We didn't even mention Pernell McPhee came back as well too, which is
Pernell McPhee came back too.
Love it. That's my guy.
Keep him 20, 30 snaps.
Yeah, McPhee and Ferguson on one side, and then you have Bowser on the other. So you need somebody to rotate with Bowser, whether it's the draft. I'm a little bit intrigued by Dunlap. I know he's not a perfect scheme fit, but they pay a lot of even man fronts now and sub package. He has that length. You get him on one side and Campbell on the other side, and he could be a Jihad Ward upgrade even.
Absolutely. I like looking at it that way. You can kick Campbell inside all the way if you want. You can have Matabuike and Dunlap and Campbell with some, ancillary off-ball players coming in the slot and things like that. I think that gives you explosiveness and length in the middle and would be great. Yeah. And of course, it doesn't count against the compensatory formula, which the Ravens love so much. But at this point, I'm just sick of it. The Ravens didn't sign any big-name free agents, but at least they get the 143rd pick next year. And it's okay, that's great. And Jake made a great point. It's all right, well, maybe if they truly do end up with their own 3rd round pick and 3 comp picks, then maybe you can trade all of those for a freaking trade 4 donkeys for a horse, as they say. And that would be fantastic. But no, the more likely thing would be that the Ravens trade those 4 3rd round picks for 6 4th round picks and then have a, full lottery.
How many day 3 picks that you're getting 4 years out of? How significant can that always really be at this point?
I mean, I think there's value to it, and they do find guys, but to sit there and try to penny pinch to preserve a 5th round comp, the 3rd round comp is valuable. That you work to preserve,
and they're getting 1 for Judon probably.
It's kind of convoluted this year, but maybe 1/3, 1/4, maybe 2/4. I don't know, but you're not going to abstain from the wide receiver market to preserve a 4th round comp pick so you can take a nose tackle that's going to sit behind Brandon Williams for 3 years.
Well, actually, endless years. He's going to be here. Actually, breaking news on Twitter, they just discovered a infinity serum that's going to allow him to live forever and always.
I thought you were going to say breaking news. Brandon Williams has signed an extension, and then we're going to have to get to the Timonium area and strap Bob down and feed him Crown Royal until he's back to normal.
First reported by Vasily Speeddown.
Call Ed Reed up. Eric DeCosta's a sucker, man.
Straight sucker.
Be like having a seizure, slowly rocking into.
But it feels like what have the Ravens gotten out of the comp formula? It's been some good edge rush. I think it's been Zadarius maybe, and McPhee. And a couple of them.
Juszczyk, I think, was a comp.
Rick Wagner?
Maybe.
I mean, that's pretty notable, but out of all of them, it's
I think it's random, though. They're missed on some of the other ones. You can't just say, I don't know.
I don't mean to be dismissive of it, but we've all kind of converged to the point where we're ready for them to make some moves. And in a year like this, maybe they shouldn't be so worried about them. Maybe next year, maybe, when you're building in the future, absolutely stockpile them. But
having more picks after you pay Lamar is a nice thing for sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it feels like Lamar will probably get paid next offseason, I would imagine, would be the likely time for them to do that.
Yeah.
Sometime around this time next year. And
I mean, it's a philosophy. Do you want a top-heavy, like a KC roster, a top-heavy roster with 8 guys making $14 million a year? Or do you want to have, Patrick Card and LJ Fort and Nick Boyle and a really, really strong middle class of your roster? And I think because they prioritize the depth in the draft, then maybe they can afford a little bit more of a top-heavy stars allocation.
I think you want 1 or 2 years where you have both, honestly, like we saw with Tampa Bay. And it's not easy to do because Tom Brady is a force multiplier there. But I think the KC thing probably works because Patrick Mahomes is just so fucking good. I feel like it's not always a fair comparison. But yeah, I think
the Rams have that kind of structure too.
Yeah, I think, but McVay right there. I mean, like that's a guy who changed things for them in a really big way. So I think if you have something like that, which I think Lamar is to an extent, but maybe not quite on the level of Mahomes, I think there maybe needs to be some give and take, but I think you do need to be ready for a year or two of just gearing up to do that. So.
And it just at this point, it feels like the Ravens, John Harbaugh is supposed to speak at the Big Data Bowl. I think next week or next month, I can't remember, but he's supposed to speak about it. They pride themselves on the analytics department so heavily. They pride themselves on all of that. They have more hires this year. And what that department has to be saying right now is that they can find value in the middle rounds at positions that other teams aren't interested in and in free agency and things like that. But I just don't feel like Nick Boyle and Pat Ricard are winning you games above an edge rusher or above a tackle or above a corner or above a wide receiver. I don't like if you remove Pat Ricard and Nick Boyle both out of last year's Ravens, two guys who have not small contracts. Nick Boyle was gone. Right. Do you think that if the Ravens had Nick Boyle that the Bills game goes differently? No. I don't think it goes differently at all. I don't think there's any difference in the way the Ravens offense truly functioned in an elimination game with or without Nick Boyle. And I love Nick Boyle to death. He's great, helps them win some games during the regular season, but having that middle of the pack philosophy at non-premium positions, if that's the goal, that doesn't add up to me all the way. I think that you're getting the value in the draft.
I think it's great for building up a roster, but at a certain point, like you got to just kind of go all in, you know.
Yeah,
right.
Cynthia Freeland.
Plenty of guys like that right now that are under contract and that are going to be here next year and probably the year after that. They're fine. Make a move. Do it.
And Garnett chiming in here makes a great point. Tampa Bay draft classes have been awesome. That saved them. They don't win the Super Bowl without hitting on Wirfs and on Winfield and the last and Whitehead. Some of the other guys they've signed, Davis, they drafted as well. And then the Saints as well. They had that prolific draft class. The Lattimore year, what was that? 17?
17. Ramczyk, Lattimore, Marcus Williams. They nailed that one. But the Ravens said that in 18. That's what I don't. So you have that. You have Lamar, Zeus, Andrews, all these guys. You have 7 starters or something out of that one class, and you're still you're still tied up against the cap. And you're still you're paying your quarterback $1 million a year, and he's an MVP. How are you still tied up against the cap? Because you didn't take a reset year 5 years ago like you should have. And if you continue to just like middle class, you want to be middle class all the way, well, you're going to be middle class all the way.
If they did that reset year, though, maybe they don't end up with Lamar Jackson and the exciting times that we have had. But it's, Ed Reed, the man himself. When we interviewed Ed Reed, I can't remember who asked, but who do you compare to the Ravens? How did the current Ravens make you think of the teams that maybe were vying for those, 2010 years or whatever the hell, the late years before the Super Bowl? It's like, oh no, they remind me of the early Ravens I was on. So I don't know. That made sense to me though. They're not far, but they're not close at the same time because of this middle out philosophy that they have. Middle out algorithm, baby. Compression, middle out compression. And they're not. I don't. It's just like
drawing dicks on my window over here, doing like the dick drawing formula.
At some point, you have to ask the girl out. Like you got to get out of the friend zone. At some point, you have to ask the girl out. You got to shit or get off the pot. You got to pack up and go home or hit a home run.
They've done a great job. They've been in the gym working on that beach bod. They're ready for a hot boy summer. They've been laying off the Guinnesses. They've been getting after it. It's time to slide up in those DMs, my man. EDC. Let's do it.
It's time. It's time to send the pick.
What's everyone's prediction for the next big move? We'll end on that.
They're going to get Melvin Ingram. That's been I just have had strong Melvin Ingram to Baltimore vibes from day one. I think it's a good fit schematically and in terms of his age and price would make sense. He's been a little banged up, looking to prove himself a little bit and go win. He hasn't really won much. So I'm going Melvin Ingram. That's the last big one, and then whatever, Keelan Cole or Xavier Woods or a rotational guy.
Boss, what do you got?
Chris Conley from the Jags. I think a more athletic version of Boykin, and they're going to say, well, we got some competition there, and
it'll breed some greatness, hopefully.
Yeah,
to an extent.
I'm going to go Curtis Samuel and Kyle Van Noy.
That would be sweet.
Yeah, I'll sign me up for that one, Jake.
That'd be sweet.
That might take some rejiggering, but I feel like they can make that work. It just feels like a realistic, like part of me even within my loins, just like my passion for jazz flute, I'm feeling Juju a little bit, but I think it's going to be those two. But yeah, man, this was fun. A little impromptu session here. Spenny slid up into the chat and said, why don't we just go ahead and go live tonight to discuss the first couple days here. Also did a quick little video on the Zeitler and Tyus Bowser signing, so check that out on our YouTube page if you just want a quick synopsis of how those deals break down and everything. But in the meantime, we really appreciate all of you guys listening in on this live stream /pod if you're listening on Wednesday. We're going to have more content coming out on Friday with a new podcast, and also we had our Beatdown Big Boards roll on today, actually. It released, covering the tight ends of this draft class. So go ahead and tune into that, and be sure to check out our Twitter page at Podcast Beatdown, where you can vote on your favorite tight end prospects. Really appreciate everyone tuning in. Boys, where can they find you on the social media? Vas, we'll start with you.
At Vasilis Beatdown, Vasilis Beatdown.
At Ravens for Dummies, that's the number 4. I'm going to call my shot. I'm calling Galladay to the Colts. I'm calling it.
Oh yeah,
Colts have been silent. The Colts have been silent. They've got to be talking to either Juju or Galladay. One of those two is going to Indy.
Galladay. I agree with that one.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. So
I think we'll get that news at like midnight tonight, and then Juju will sign somewhere right after, and then Curtis Samuel sign somewhere tomorrow. That's how I think the chips will lie. Maybe
Shams will break it, just like he broke Jameis. And he also broke Trump getting COVID at like 2 a.m.
That was sick.
But yeah, really appreciate you guys tuning in.
Stick to basketball, Shams.
Stick to basketball. Poor rap sheet. We will talk to you guys again on Friday. And until then, arrivederci.
See ya.